Hello and welcome to Michael and Ivanka's Grand Podcast. It's a historical record of our rise from obscurity to international notoriety.
Is it though?
So once we do something that really takes off, suddenly people will be like, oh, they've got a podcast, and then they will then go back through and trace how we got from where we started to where we ended up. No one reads an autobiography of someone that's not famous or successful. Not that we're not famous or successful, but anyway. My name's Michael Forrest.
And I'm Ivanka Magic. Or Mike, whichever.
Oh, reversion. You can hear that transition if you listen back to the podcast. So what are we doing this week?
This week we're having a catch-up. We've not spoken to each other for a couple of weeks. We've both been doing some things that need to be discussed. And so this week we are treating our listeners to an episode of us having a chat.
We're going to do a little bit of a kind of status update, really. Kind of just report on where we're up to, what we've been doing, and how that kind of relates to whatever our mission is of, trying to get things to change for the better.
Trying to live in a world that isn't too awful.
It's like, no, it's work. Ivanka's like, oh, it's just going to be nice. I'm like, no, this is going to be important, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything we say is always very, very important. But I'm looking forward to sort of a nice, relaxed chat myself.
You're really hitting that. We're important. We're very interesting. Ivanka's feeling confident today.
It's because I've got glasses now. Finally, I've reached the age where I need to wear reading glasses.
Oh, Lordy Lord.
So I'm now feeling extra clever.
How's it going, Ivanka? What you've been?
Well, that's a big question. I think
top level, and then we'll dig in.
Top level. I've been working really hard, frankly. I've earned some money, which is always a joy.
Is it?
Well, it's nice to not be skint, I find. I had that moment where, I was like, no, I need to get some work. Anyway, I've earned some money, which is positive. I start my teaching thing at Sussex Uni next week, which is a positive. I've been doing still interesting projects, so 3 or 4 days on adult social care things and a few days on retirement things, so I'm enjoying that. And life otherwise, family, everyone's happy. My major big news is simply the need for reading glasses that has been identified. Have I mentioned that I wear reading glasses now?
It's immediately apparent upon video conferencing with you.
I went to Nick and I both had our eyes tested. He was a bit sort of like, I don't wear glasses. Whereas I was like, wow, I get to wear glasses. Finally, people would take me seriously. That was my response. Finally. How are you, Michael? You went to America Land. How was that?
I went to San Francisco for a week. It was mostly nocturnal, as I sort of woke up in the early hours and then had to kind of make the best of it before the light appeared or things opened or work could be started. It's one of those go to the Starbucks at sort of 5 a.m. every morning. It was quite fun I saw a little bit more of San Francisco than I had before, but it was all at night. I just kind of forced myself out of the hotel room, even though I just wanted to go to sleep because I didn't really adjust my time. It's a big time difference.
It is. It's not pleasant.
So, and then, this week I've just been having a lot of, working on stuff and just trying to kind of keep up with my production schedules. Podcast, videos on YouTube, then those sort of blank state video I had to obviously finish off last week as well, though that was done, wasn't it? So I don't know, just the blank state video interfered with my normal YouTube video productions, so I sort of had to put in some extra effort to kind of get that back on track, so I've got to finish that today. But yeah, it's chilly here, snowing.
Oh yeah, we've got that. Was it nice to meet your work colleagues?
It was good. They I've sort of come into a team that is used to a thing taking 2 minutes to build and figured out a way of making it so that it can build in 2 seconds or instantly.
Did they all stand up and give you a round of applause when you walked in the office?
Well,
went,
what
yes!
happened? Well, this was something I had been.
Huh?
Well, this was something I had been working on, but then it was this. I came into this big it's like this big sort of startup world, Bay Area, whatever you call it, office with all the amenities, a big wall of snack options available, all the different coffees, all the different sort of things. Every lunchtime there was some special thing put on for you, and like in the breakfast on the Friday, and all these different things. But I come in, it's all. Sort of do my thing, kind of beavering away on my thing, but then it's already like the kind of boss man's heard about what I've been doing. It's like, oh, wow. And then on the Friday, they sort of got me to do they have this like round of stand-up talks where you just kind of, and there's people, and the marketing thing, we've changed this. And I was sort of, and they sort of say, oh, well, why don't you talk about that? I was like, okay. So I sort of prepared some slides and went up and did a bit of, got some laughs. I showed some pictures of what I've been doing, got a round of applause, and it's been a while since I've had a round of applause. So and it was a bit like, oof, heart rate going kind of thing, just standing up in front of a load of people that don't really know who I am, just to sort of explain some technical stuff that I'm doing. But I think I told the story well, and it certainly benefited from our conversations in structuring that. And then, I've been hearing things afterwards about how people liked my little talk. Did a bit of, I'm a, as you can tell, I'm British, therefore I find nothing awesome. But
did you do that?
Yeah,
that's very good. But except for this.
I don't really find things awesome, but here's what I've done.
Nice.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit like, I've just overworked, I think would be the one word answer. Just oversubscribed.
I used the phrase "my brain's run out" yesterday evening. I was just done, and my head actually was physically hurting. So I just had enough. I was like, all this thinking and having to be clever takes it out of you, I find.
Yeah. So this week you did a sort of Twitter thread. Do you want to sort of like tell our 4 listeners about it?
So
sorry, tell our listeners about it.
Our infinitely patient listeners about my Twitter activities. So the headline, I think, is Ivanka tweets and gets 13,000 likes and over 6,000 retweets at time of recording. That is a lot. That is
13,000.
As Nick said. Nick looked at it and went, well, it's not as good as the Trump one. I was like, yeah, but this time I've done it without the intervention from the President of America. So I was quite pleased with that. Yeah. But that's kind of the headline punchline to maintain your interest in the story. But really, the what happened was, we have definitely talked about this on the podcast. For somebody who spent some of their formative years in a country with a lot of political back and forth, which ended up in a war, the current state of the world is very unsettling emotionally.
Yeah.
And it sort of feeds into, for me personally, it feeds into lots of feelings of anxiety and anger and lack of control and all these things that I think, they're quite intellectually, I think they're very understandable. Emotionally, doesn't really make it that much easier to deal with. So on Wednesday morning, before I was sitting at the kitchen, we always have breakfast together, and I was like, I feel really angry and sad in my belly was the best way of describing it. And I felt like that for a while. So I was sat on the train, and I seem to be going through a phase of tearing up quite easily, watch the news or can't watch the news. So I sat on the train and I wrote a thing that came out of me a bit, I would say, either way I felt about it. It was more like a poem. It has rhythm, and it just came out like that. I did very little. I removed one or two words, and I hovered over, because the second to last line, or last line, uses the word Britain. And I thought about saying, should I say UK, England, Britain? And I just went with Britain, because I think it has bigger connotations in terms of empire, frankly. So I put this thing on the internet, and shall I read it out?
Yeah, just
it's not
read it
super
out.
long. So it says, when I was 14, I lived in a country called Yugoslavia. This is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. We had hyperinflation. That means that they had to knock zeros off the currency so you didn't have to carry buckets of cash. This is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. We had lots of nationalist chatter, even some pop songs that triggered fights at school discos. This is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. Then I was 15. Teachers didn't get paid. My mother was a teacher, so I know. But this is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. It's the others people blamed, the ones not like us. But this is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. I was in Mostar in school, and I wondered how I would get home if there was a war. But this is a civilised country, people said. There will be no war. When I was 16, my parents went out to dinner one night. I babysat my siblings. It was a Saturday. We're going to England, my parents said. We think there will be war. It was 1991 and there was war. It's 2019. I'm 44 and I live in Britain. But this is Britain, people keep saying. The response has been quite, I don't know if it's a surprise. I don't know how it got picked up that people have shared it. I think it's as emotional as I felt.
I guess what it touches that government shutdown thing, doesn't it? Like with teachers not getting paid. So that makes it feel very like right now, and then just the idea of sort of others, us versus them, is very much a problem that we're all having to kind of untangle at the moment. So I just think even on those, and then just the fact that it's, very much from your experience.
In some ways, I think it's like it doesn't need explanation. So I haven't responded to any comments. The only person I responded to was somebody that I know who commented, so if I don't know you, I've not commented on your comment because I think I've said, as my sister said, she said, you said your piece. You can shut up now. But it was the assumption, obviously, lots of people have made that it's all about Brexit. So there's a very literal interpretations, which is like, well, this is Britain. Of course there won't be war. That's not the point. The point is, when you're living in a country where things are... So one person commented and they said, war happens, peace you have to work at. And I think that's the crux of it. There was a historian, a woman who I had never encountered. It's quite nice. Some of the people that have commented and shared it are... they're historians. They study this sort of stuff. So Alex von Tunzelmann, she shared it and she said, because she got engaged with some of the commentary first, with people saying, people taking it very literally, which anyway, she basically said this is about exceptionalism, it's not an apocalyptic prediction of what's going to happen in England. That's not what it is. It is simply my experience. For me, I did live in a country that, nobody goes to school in the morning or goes out to dinner thinking, obviously the country's descending into war. Some people commented, of course we knew that it would go to war after Tito died. Yes, lots of people did. My father understood that, which is why we left before there was a war. We didn't wait for the war to prove a point. There's also lots of people that have assumed I'm not British from my name. You don't need to say everything, I think, in a thing like this. Oh, by the way, I was born in Birmingham. Somebody said something snark. Oh, you must have been well connected if you could make it out. And I so wanted to go born in Birmingham. But I
suppose, that's the other thing is there's an immigration, there's a refugee line on this. If you don't know we don't know, your name is foreign.
Yeah, there's also, even, I think personally, it's not about, this is my story. It could be lots of stories in lots of different places, but it also talks about, the uncertainty around climate change. Nobody knows what's going to happen until it happens. That is the reality. And your assumption, or any assumption that it's going to be okay, is extremely passive and not. It's like being diagnosed with something bad and going, well, it'll probably be okay. Nobody does that. We all try and keep our house in order. But when it comes to sort of politics, we seem to think, or government, or kind of the state of the world, we seem to assume that the state of the world will look after itself, and it won't.
Yeah, most of us don't know what it's like for something innocuous to turn out to be life-changing, because we're kind of kept quite safe generally, I did say this a couple of weeks ago, before, the end as the sort of Enlightenment was coming in and the sort of scientific revolutions, and there was a lot of people felt like it was that then was sort of the end of war and the end of sort of the less desirable human behaviours. And then, you get, the First World War and the Second World War, you get all these things happening afterwards that people just sort of weirdly assumed were now impossible. And so to think that this time in history is any different is pretty naive.
Yeah, I think this, if you want to live in a clean and tidy house, you have to clean it and tidy it.
Yeah, it's boring.
It's really boring. But, if that's what you want to achieve, you actually have to put some effort in. This historian woman, she said, sharing this again because it's an important warning against exceptionalism. The thread doesn't predict an apocalyptic scenario post-Brexit. It cautions against taking security and stability for granted. We shouldn't assume it can't happen here. Thank you very much, Helen.
You've made a piece of art that is being interpreted and shared.
So I think, it's like, I was a bit, I don't know where it came from, but it did.
It's weird in the times now because there is so much sensationalism in the media is all about this sort of sensationalizing every little thing and kind of showing you things from so far away that you do get sort of desensitized to it as well, which is I think is a modern perspective on all of this that maybe has been missing. So we're not only kind of dealing with that complacency.
Yeah.
And thinking that these things don't need to be worked out. We don't need a European Union. What did that ever solve? We were kind of at war before all that, quite regularly. I just wanted to throw that in, that I think now we've got that kind of complacency plus kind of just being completely exhausted from all of the threats that we're perceiving that never do come to anything.
So I think the other side, some of the comments that are on the post are about, yes, but Yugoslavia was like this and Yugoslavia was like that. It's like, yes, every set of circumstances is completely unique. But this idea that, and then somebody from Syria has commented, or somebody has said, I've got a friend from Syria. Somebody from Syria was like, that's the thing that people don't understand. It's like, when somebody says Syria to you today, or somebody says Bosnia to you today, or Yemen, or any of these places, we think of them as war zones.
Yeah.
Before they were war zones, people got up in the morning and rowed over whether their coffee was hot enough, and what happened at that soap opera last
Who's
night.
Giving you?
Who's giving me grief
cold
about
coffee?
I tend to be the one dishing out the cold coffee. No, it's like there's a whole "should you warm the coffee cup up" conversation.
Oh,
what?
No, what?
Well.
Okay,
perhaps
go on.
that's
Sorry.
a little insight.
I just not heard that one.
we don't row over hot coffee anyway. But
I think you've exposed the trouble in paradise. Go on. Sorry, Syria. Back to Syria.
The thing that people were shouting about whatever soap operas were being watched, or whatever was on telly, and whatever some pop song, blah blah blah. They were living their lives. And then, they were watching the news every night, and maybe, checking the radio, what's going on. Oh, those politicians, they might have been getting drunk in pubs going, oh, for those politicians, what a bunch of losers, or aren't they brilliant, whatever it is. And at some point, that was not the case anymore, and it turns into war. And it is a slow boiling, it is it's a slow boil. It's not it's not one day.
Yeah, people think change is this sudden thing, but it's like I've been saying with the singularity. I think we've just kind of eased into it. I think it's happening. Like, I think nothing ever happens in an immediate moment. Like, everything always slowly encroaches. And then maybe, you get these sort of, I don't know, defining events, like the morning of the Brexit vote, where you go, what? But then it's just, everything's slow. Change is slow. And even radical change. And
you can trace it back to events that may or may not have seemed so dramatic at the time. Rosa Parks sits at the front of a bus. That's a powerful moment in history. I bet it didn't feel particularly powerful at the time to most of the people that were involved with it. It's like
it's just someone's on a bus. So what?
And so it's like the political unrest often leads to economic unrest, which is what people can't cope with and they can't live with. Politics is all very interesting when it's something that happens on the news that you choose to discuss or not discuss. When it starts affecting your livelihood, that is not something that's so easily dealt with. And the problem that one of the things that I find unsettling is the problems with the climate crisis. Whatever, if you want to be all gentle about it or not, the reason for me, there's a few too many things colliding at the moment that make this a very unpleasantly unsettling time to live in. But it doesn't stop me getting up in the morning and going to work. It's just that I think the more people that understand that to keep our house tidy, we need to actually clean and tidy it, the better. I
heard someone on the first Team Human episode I skipped through yesterday was one where there was this guy that was talking as though, like, making plans as though 4 degrees is basically is a done deal, and just kind of like talking about this kind of future world where the wastelands and how we're going to kind of live in that world, and just kind of planning for that. And I was like, I am not ready to give up completely on doing anything about this 4 degree thing yet. You seem to be ready for that, and like talking as though you're assuming that
that's what's going to happen.
It's unchangeable. It's like, come on, I didn't like that guy. I had to just skip the episode. Then the other episode, someone said something about he was like a filmmaker, and he said they just sort of think of the politicians and all that lot as the grown-ups, that kind of they do all their serious grown-up stuff, and we can just play and kind of do what we're doing. And it's, you don't expect the grown-ups to drop the ball or kind of not be, looking after you. And it's when that,
I think that's really the the really difficult thing for everybody. And it's like, you know, that's what we do. We elect our politicians to keep the country running. That's what we do. And so this idea that we have to actually, you know, you look up and they're not behaving themselves and they're not, you know, mummy and daddy haven't been shopping for food.
They don't seem to be getting on with their friends that they need to be talking to. No. And, you know, these the people in the other countries. That is the only reason to be a politician rather than just an engineer of a state. It's like because you got to like deal with people from other countries and keep those relationships strong. And
each other. Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May aren't talking to each other.
I mean, let's not even.
Do you know what I mean? It's like so to those people who read my piece of art, who read my words and try and explain line by line why that's not the same as Britain. I'm sorry, but you're really deeply missing the point.
So often I do an I Ching reading, which is, you know, the sort of Chinese book of, you know, 5,000-year-old book of wisdom that you basically throw some, you randomly generate an answer to a question from a tome of knowledge kind of thing. And I was having one of those moments and I asked the question, why do I work so hard on things when nobody pays attention? I was like, why am I doing this? Why do I just spend my whole life just killing myself over stuff that no one gives a shit about? And it really like answered it.
What did it say?
So, and I think this also puts a lens on the, you know, the conversation we had like, about our approaches to things. And so it says, it gave me hexagram 64, before completion. The transition from chaos to order depends upon achieving your inner true calm. So I might sort of skip the kind of like fluffy stuff, but
the horoscope bit.
The transition is not yet complete. Here it depends upon you strengthening your clarity, calm and conscientiousness, but boring, whatever. Okay, it often comes as an indication that we have not yet achieved a genuine inner equanimity. Did I say that? Equanimity.
What is equanimity?
Just sort of repose, just sort of like something, just inner, just inner self-assuredness, and like you're kind of in balance with yourself, I think. But feel free to, I think I did Google it at the time.
Yeah.
I can right-click on it, can't I? Look up equanimity.
I've looked it up, you're right.
Yeah. And as long as we respond to outer pressures with our egos by worrying, desiring, or becoming aggressive, we cannot attain a successful repose. The I Ching reminds us how to abandon the hysterics of the ego in favour of acceptance, modesty, and inner balance. And I kind of feel like that's the point I was trying to make about your sort of speech on Facebook showed an inner repose. It felt like it was coming from a place of equanimity and sort of like self-assuredness and sort of not needing to... Whereas I kind of felt like what I was trying to do was being battered by the ego still. I was still kind of like second-guessing what someone else might say, what some criticism... A lot of it was coming from sort of imagined attacks upon my own ego, maybe. Just the worry, the desire, the kind of, even the question that I've asked is like, what is that? That's ego. The whole thing is ego. And it needs to come from, I kind of need to just find and accept that inner inner repose that lets me not get distracted by, how other people might react. Or if I just said the same, and I think it's just to clarify 100%. I meant it as a huge positive, right?
Yeah.
That you wouldn't be kind of that you would just, here's my piece.
But I think that is yeah. So I was just thinking about what that means in terms of what you said. So that is how I feel at the moment in my life. It may be something to do with simply where I am, who I am, how I am. And I think there's been a big change. I have felt a big change from recording this podcast. This podcast has been, for me, a journey to being fully accepting of my own voice. So not in a therapy psychology way, I don't think, more in a work way, a just doing it every week, and the sky has not caved in. It hasn't. Okay, we're not famous, we're not rich. However, it's been...
Well, maybe it's because I haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah, maybe we just have to wait for you.
I can just get there as well.
But I think that's one of the things that I've been... I mean, for people who know me, when I am confident in my opinion, I have no problem expressing it. I think or where I feel strongly, maybe it's not even confidence. If I feel really strongly about something, never in my life have I been particularly bothered about expressing that opinion or view or whatever it is, and then worry about the consequences later and then go, what have I done? But I think for me, I don't know, I do think the act of recording and listening back to oneself weekly is quite an interesting. It's got to be similar to doing a diary, just, I think. That has been very useful.
You're bouncing.
You're having your ideas challenged in a pretty safe, okay, we broadcast it on the internet, but come on. I think when you put something in a podcast, if you put something on Twitter, it's very easy for somebody to go at you. But if you're putting it in a podcast, people have to invest a bit of time to actually listen to it before they can go and
also I think we take out, we take out all the stuff that you may, take out all the ums and ahs and the just got to look this up and all that stuff. So it does become, okay, this is what I meant to say. And I hope I'm editing it so that you're hearing what you meant to say as well. But I'm glad that, it just sounds like I got to catch up, and I think it comes across in that the thing you did this week as well. I'm very happy that you're in that place, and I would like to be able to get there myself.
Well, darling, you have much to learn.
So let me just go through a few more lines of this. So this denotes a time of great responsibility. In a very real sense, it can be said that the state of the world depends upon your thoughts and conduct now. The external world will come into order if the external world will only come into order if the inner world has done so. Therefore, seek now to correct whatever in yourself is at odds with the principles of the sage, which is the book, whatever. Quiet your ego, make humility and acceptance your primary goals, and move forward like a fox walking on ice. I was walking on ice today. Cautiously, deliberately, and gently. By persevering in what is true and good, you build the foundation upon which good fortune can come to rest. Wow. And then I quite like that there's the changing lines. It's a time to wait, but don't lose sight of the goal. To rescue yourself and others, stay true to the end. Yeah, we've got this. Do not indulge in egotistical fantasies now. Okay, got it. No more egotistical fantasies. It's very hard, though. Because the annoying thing is, as soon as you don't need it anymore, you get 13,000 likes on your tweet. But not before. No. Although, you've had a bit of encouragement, I guess, but from the Trump thing, but can I taste it with the ego before I don't need it? And then it says, do not exercise your ego when things change for the better. By remaining disciplined and modest, you ensure continued good fortune. And that's what I'm hoping I'm on the cusp of. And it sounds like you're already kind of doing it.
But I think there's only... Go on. There's one little bit, though, that I think that might help, which is that... this is part of that conversation I was having with my cousin when I was in Croatia before Christmas. And he was like, he's in 65, 66. It's like, the whole purpose of life is just to keep working on yourself and to keep understanding yourself. And I think if that's the aim, then, being kind of this whole, your best self, your acceptance of yourself, all these phrases, sometimes they're pushed out by like hippie life coachy types. But really being if you make sure you're the best you, then I think one does better work, rather than like, it's not for the purpose of doing better work. It's for the purpose of being yourself, truly.
Well, and I think part of it is just literally not wasting half of your energy on sort of imagined threats and like, if the thing is about how you think, well, for me, it's like the thing is so often so much about how I'm worried people react to it, that gets incorporated back into it, it's that problem of defining something by what it's not. It's that problem. And so that's sort of, okay, I know what this is. I know what I'm trying to do. I'm clear. I trust myself enough to know that obviously that there is enough substance to this that I don't have to be defensive about it. I don't know. I hope I heard what you said as well, but like, it comes back to that individual being the seat of genius. That's not a good way to think. And I think when you talk about this thing just coming through you into Twitter, that's really how this stuff works. And you just need to sort of get out the way and just let it happen. So when an idea comes through, get out the way and don't kind of get fixated on like altering it and just protecting it and doing things. Just let the idea flow freely through you. And that's not a thing about you. That's not a thing about you as an individual. It's a thing about just, I guess, being in harmony with the world.
But yes, I think it is. I was going to say I'm no writer. Well, I like writing things down. Writing is a way of sorting out my ideas, but I don't really write for any reason other than sometimes it's useful to me. But when you're analysing, when I'm doing my work, when I'm analysing qualitative data, you shift it around, then a pattern emerges. And when the pattern emerges, then it's very easy to speak about it because it's a pattern and I can explain it because it's based on analysis. And it's the same way, like sitting on the train on Wednesday morning, I have shifted around my anxious feelings for weeks, months, 2 years. And so, there was that represents the sort of result of the analysis, if that makes, so it's like, and at that point it's done. And anyone else can say or do whatever they like. It's like, this is my truth, please help yourself to some other truth, like we've all got them. But I still, I hope more people read it properly than don't.
What I then loved about my I Ching reading was that the changing lines led to the second hexagram of enthusiasm. So after we'd done an episode on enthusiasm, I thought it was quite nice to get some advice on that. That there was some stuff that we didn't think of. So it starts with proper enthusiasm opens every door. The I Ching teaches that there are two kinds of enthusiasm, one that leads to misfortune and one that leads to success. This hexagram comes as a sign that you can proceed with confidence now if your enthusiasm is properly founded.
Oh no, how do you know if it is proper?
So, Improper enthusiasm is fueled by the desires of the ego.
Oh.
People often desire recognition, wealth, power, or freedom from difficulty. Such desires can become so great that we will do anything to achieve them. Our energy rises as we wildly pursue our goal, but this unruly and egotistical enthusiasm inevitably leads us into incorrect and imbalanced behaviour and into misfortune.
Oh, no.
Proper enthusiasm, on the other hand, is fueled by a devotion to attaining and expressing inner balance and inner truth. When your aim is not to influence others or to satisfy your ego, but to follow the guidance of the higher power, you acquire another kind of energy, a balanced and bottomless eagerness for living in step with what is right and good. In this, there is true power and true grace.
Who wrote this thing? This I Ching?
This is an old. So you got to sort of translate it a little bit from oldie tongue, I guess. But but we're talking about a place of genuineness,
yes.
A place of truth, a place of honesty, rather than the place of ego.
Yeah.
This hexagram reminds you that striving out of your ego will now only push you further away from your goals. Seek instead to follow proper principles. Keep to what is innocent, correct, and kind, and the creative will come to your aid.
Oh.
That was a capital C, creative. I suppose the creative could be the thing that rushes through you and when at that moment where kind of you bring something into existence. The path of truth is always the path of least resistance.
Is that what they say?
So that was a reading that I was like, okay, that was every so often it's like, right, I'm going to tell you in no uncertain terms the answer to the question. So I've just been but it's one of those things. I mean, it's a horoscope, but it doesn't pretend to be quite as closely bound to something. It admits to the randomness a little bit more. It doesn't sort of like. It's not like you were born on this day. Therefore you will come into great fortune soon. It's a bit more like just be a good person.
Yeah, but I think these are this is good advice. I mean, we've spoke. I think that the readings that I've always found most fit my life philosophy. I don't know if you're supposed to find things that fit your life philosophy, or you're supposed to let your life philosophy find things. I don't know, but is all this the Buddhist teachings? A lot of the Buddhist teachings around absence of ego and human, just being work on yourself, and other things will be that's really truly the only thing in life that you can really do.
I wish the dog was not barking as you were saying that.
I don't know what his problem. I think there's too many people off work and sliding around in the road outside. Maybe I'll bring him up. It might actually be more useful. Hang on. Okay. He won't bark more than bark then. Floyd, Floyd. Come on, in. Floyd. There you go. Lie down on Lila's. Or do you want me to bring it out? He's now curled up on the floor at my feet.
That's how some other podcasters do it. I know. So
get the dog in.
To have him in the room. Yeah. So sorry. Yeah, and I like that. I like the I Ching because it's sort of like you got to have some sort of magic book in your life just to sort of throw in a bit of that kind of ancient wisdom. I don't really want it to be the Bible, or I don't know what. If there's a Buddhism book, but like I found this one. I thought that's cool. That's like an encoding of human wisdom. That like isn't influenced by the modern world in the same way, but still should occasionally provide a bit of guidance.
But ego also keeps you alive. You know what I mean? Like it's not all. The ego is not the root of all evil, but it's something that can really. I mean, but most evil people have lost check of their ego. It's that sort of.
But don't forget, my question was, why do I work on these things so hard when no one pays attention? Right? So that's the framing of all this. So like,
what about me?
Maybe if I asked it about what's wrong with Donald Trump, we sort of looked at it from that perspective, it would mean something very different. But like,
true. Okay. How are you going to work on your kindness and humility and?
Well, I don't know about that, but one thing I did have a little think about was I sort of ended up like on the plane. It was like 8 hours in. I started thinking about. So this is kind of let's do a little blank state segment. I thought like, well, maybe if like after our conversation, maybe I can just explain to people what I'm trying to do, rather than trying to let it naturally. Because the more I think about the video I've done, the more it's like, to have an opinion on it, you have to both be a blockchain expert and really know lots about government, and it's like, it's not really, it's kind of, I've done something that if I could get a conversation around would benefit me in one of the more difficult areas of knowledge. But it's something that is going to be there's going to be like two people that can actually respond to it. So and just through the prism of talking about education, talking about, to some extent, you've got to, is it to start conversations, or is it to bring people into some things that we know are true, but that they might not know are true yet, because they haven't really thought about it yet, which is probably, if this comes from, I want to help people make better voting decisions, ultimately, like be better democratic. But I read an article today about how we shouldn't be criticising people who voted Leave, even though it makes them worse off, because values-based voting isn't a bad thing per se. If you really do believe sovereignty is a thing, then why shouldn't you be, we always vote for socialist things that will maybe lead to us having less tax, having to pay more tax. So it's not necessarily an argument. Also just thinking about, there's nothing different between poor people. Poor people aren't poor because they're dirty. I can't think of a better way to put this. I don't want to leave this one. But like people, like rich people think poor people are dirty, right? Like, ugh, poor people. They're not poor because they're dirty. They're dirty because they're poor. I kind of want to reject that they're dirty thing, but do you see what I mean? It's it's simply a difference in the amount of money they've got. There is no like qualitative difference between them and you. It's just they haven't got as much money.
Yeah, I mean that's the same. I started I know we've and we'll probably come to the sharing of that. The guy who went to Davos and went, "No, hello billionaires, can you please pay more tax?" There's a TED talk by him. Like just started watching. I've saved it because I haven't got time, but I didn't have time this morning. But it's about that. It's like poor people aren't. There's always this assumption that poor people are somehow, they smoke because they're stupid and poor, or they eat unhealthily because they're stupid and poor and they don't know any better. Whereas that's just not. They're just people.
It costs more money to go to get the better food. It's just, there's money, and that's actually really easy to solve. Well, especially compared to a lot of the other problems we're facing. If we just distributed the money a bit more easily. So this guy, if he's talking about that as well, I really need to find out more about who he is. That
Davos video that included him and the woman from Oxfam. When the billionaire went, America's got more employment than it's ever had. She said, of women who are having to wear adult nappies because they're not allowed to go for a wee at work. I mean, fuck you with your employment figures.
Thank you so much for that job.
You billionaire twat. My mother once, we were talking about Mark Shuttleworth and Bill Gates in the same conversation. And she said, I think she started, she's like, that Bill Gates, she goes, giving away all his money now. Now he's giving away his money. She goes, at least Mark Shuttleworth's always giving away his money. She's like it's built into his wealth, like this kind of setting up trusts and doing things and Ubuntu and all that stuff. She's
albeit running away to a tax haven.
There's still that. There is definitely still that element of no, I'll tell you where my money's going to go. That philanthropic thing that guy was having a go at them for, but. However, at least it is baked in. Same with like a lot of these, like the guy that owns Patagonia but he does tax. Patagonia does tax, you see. Did you see I definitely said it on here. They gave their tax relief that Trump's given them away.
Yeah.
I mean,
we talked about that, didn't we?
We did.
Since we are talking about this, I just I did do a little attempt at a meme on Facebook on this just yesterday. I said money won't solve all your problems. So it's understandable that billionaires choose certain types of philanthropy, i.e. the kind of stuff that will benefit them. I thought, like, what if we introduced something like discretionary taxes where people could have a little more say over where their contribution went. So if Mark Shuttleworth could pay his taxes, but also because he's sort of like, he didn't technically have to pay this chunk of it, he's sort of that maybe he should be allowed to like move a slider a little bit. Maybe it's only 10% of that he can actually say where it goes, and the rest of it we decide. But like, that's in balance with how many of his problems match with our problems. So I sort of connected it back to the video through that, but no one gives a shit.
I think it's a interesting. So combining tax paying with philanthropy, basically, or that sort of like, I'm a billionaire. I'm not a billionaire because I'm stupid, so I want to make my own decisions about where my money goes. I immediately translated it down to, when I saw it, I was like, I don't want to pay more tax. I just want the tax to be the right, just tax everybody. Let's get everyone paying tax, the same amount of tax. And I was like, I'm not giving them more tax than I'm supposed to give them. It's like, but then I'm not a billionaire.
But also I think that's not a. I think the fact that we do like whittle down our taxes to the bare minimum it's not. I mean, isn't some of this about thinking about other people and thinking about
totally.
society, and like we should not see tax as this, theft. We should see it as our contribution to,
very gut emotional, like, what do you mean? Oh, would I choose to give more tax over my tax bill? I suppose I did see it yesterday when I paid my tax bill. I was like, how much? It's like, more than this? This is plenty. So I definitely had that moment. I think maybe the timing was off.
My brother had just paid his as well, so he was like, happy birthday, Mr. Taxman.
This idea, I was trying to go through like the motion in my head of paying tax and then going, no, here's another 10%.
I know,
like,
this is
it's
what
really
I want to imagine.
It's like, no, I can't even picture it in my own. I'll give them more.
Well, if you're not even kind of, if you have that reaction still, then what hope for, people, I guess, need to be.
Well,
It's just like, it's the money that you would be donating to charity.
Yeah, I get
to some extent. So I just wish, I wish people could. I think there could be something in that, but obviously it sounds like you'd have to overcome a lot of.
But no, I think it's a change thing, like having to do the. I just need to process it. I'll come back to you like in a couple of months, going, "Oh, Michael's brilliant idea. I've come to terms with it now. It's sifted through my brain. Yes, I should be a vegan who pays extra tax."
So I wanted to. I don't know if this is right either, but. Maybe this is just, here's my mission statement. Maybe it's not something that needs to be recorded and broadcast. I need to keep some mystery to it. But so I put, hello, my name is Michael, and I wanted to explain this idea I have. I live in the UK, the home of Brexit. However this circus concludes, we will still have a lot of problems to solve here. I wanted to find a way to use my own particular set of skills as helpfully as possible. In many ways, we're enjoying the safest and most prosperous period in human history, but it doesn't feel like that. Inequality has never been so chronic. Never in history has it been possible for so few individuals to hoard so much wealth. Environmental catastrophe is upon us, yet we continue to wreak havoc as we find more and more ways to permanently tear energy from the planet's dwindling reserves. Never before has mental illness been so ubiquitous, as swathes of the population feel surplus to requirements, betrayed and ignored by their leaders. As the digital age matures, we have become separate individuals set against one another, railroaded by the predictions of our own personal bubbles optimised not for our benefit, but to sell our attention to advertisers. Never before have stupidity and ignorance been given such an easy ride. Never before has less knowledge or accountability been required to broadcast an opinion. Reality has become white noise. Distraction follows endless, unlimited distraction, as our emotions are relentlessly buffeted on the whims of algorithms. I think we need to focus. I don't mean focus on the people we disagree with and why they're wrong, but I don't mean focus on the anxieties of our situation either. In recent years, we've been inventing new technologies at an accelerating rate, but the only guide has been the market's insatiable thirst for what they call growth. That growth does not benefit us. It eats our work and attention, only to be skimmed away by investors who store it in our city centres as real estate, inflating house prices to the point of absurdity, driving us from our homes and scattering communities to the wind. I want to focus all of our energy, all of our technology, and all of our creativity on something that first and foremost benefits us. So I've come up with this idea to imagine a new country, designed from the ground up to benefit its citizens first. To think about how things would look if we dumped all the legacy and used all the latest technologies to design a new system from scratch. In my mind, this is starting small. It's hypothetical, it's just one country, not the entire planet, not something that we have to figure out exactly how to do. It's interesting to me because it short-circuits the how that can sabotage a conversation about doing this in the real world. Given unlimited resources and the most skilled designers, engineers and civic leaders, how would we make a government that took care of everything it's supposed to? I'm not talking about marginal improvements. I'm talking about a world where anybody can get their clothes in a boutique store, if you like that sort of thing. Anybody can eat organic and eschew plastic, where anyone can get the private healthcare experience of having a doctor who knows you well, who you can trust to spot a problem before it becomes a problem. A state where everybody can have a nice home, where we could work on things that we're most interested in and be supported while we try to figure out exactly what that might be. Where schools are like palaces with well-paid teachers who have all the best resources at their disposal, where everybody feels safe and nobody has to resort to drugs or violence just to survive. Personally, I think there's more than enough wealth kicking around this planet to make something like that possible, but you don't have to agree with me to play the game. I just want to see what people would do if money was no object, which, by the way, it is no object, but I'll save that for another video. I'm a software engineer, musician, and I make videos. I'm good at thinking about systems and making stuff to put on the internet, but I'm just one person. Most of the ideas I've shared on Blank State so far are not my own. I didn't really understand this growth thing until a couple of weeks ago. I didn't really pay too much attention to the environment until Ivanka kept bringing it up on our podcast. I stopped eating meat to lose weight, not because I cared about the animals. I wasn't aware at how angry everyone was outside the capital of the country I live in until Brexit. I knew something was wrong, but I assumed it was just me. But it wasn't just me, and it isn't just you. I need your help, I need your skills, experience and unique perspective, because I have this strong sense that while we're all worried about something different, that when presented with a vision of how things should be, we would mostly agree. If all this sounds like some utopian vision, why not ask yourself this? Why is utopia such a dirty word? Why is simply describing someone's vision as utopian enough to discredit their argument? How are we ever going to invent something we want if we're not even allowed to imagine it or talk about it? So I'm going to keep creating media for this channel. The cryptocurrency taxes was just one idea, and I think it demonstrates how a little video can effectively communicate a very complex idea. I'd like this channel to start feeling more like the School of Life, lots of ideas presented in short, shareable videos, created to start conversations. I'd love to get some help choosing what to focus on next. What idea is obvious to you but no one else seems to understand? I want to give you some tools to transcend the artificial divides we're all experiencing and work together to picture something better. So that was sort of like the blank statement introduction.
Yeah, there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
There's a lot to respond to. But it's very heartfelt. Well, not heartfelt, that's minimising it.
Well,
I think it's, or maybe it isn't.
I don't think it's minimising it. It's just like what I've realised I want to
say. I think the thing that stuck with me is that what's your thing that seems obvious to you, but no one else?
Right. Okay. Well, that was in the call to action, so that's good that that's what you remembered.
Even the feedback on this Twitter thing, there's lots of people, everyone's got their own version of, like, in their head of what they're afraid of or what they're bothered by or what makes them angry. And I think having an arena where those things can be discussed or put forward is a good. Also, it's focused on solving, not blaming. Because that's it. That's the other thing on the feedback on this thing of mine. It's like, well, if you didn't, no, you were not as bad as you. You're not. You know what I mean? It's like it's still there's no need for debate. It doesn't call for debate. But if there's going to be a debate, it would be nice that it would be about what you're going to do, rather than, You know, it sort of assumes everyone has to do something, which I think is really important. You know, which I tried to, you know, we've differently included, like my Trump essay thing, sort of, you know, says that everyone needs to do something. What you're going to do, not let me explain to you why you need to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think
And
it's on a
season do.
Yeah, and it's a positive because it's like, it's not what you want to fix. It's because it isn't. It's like, what new ideas have you got?
It's like,
So,
let's come up with a code, let's forget. So, but do you think like it would be valuable to broadcast this as a thing? Or do you, I don't know, like...
Well, why not? Well, number one, like, you know, I think...
Strategy. But what about strategy, marketing strategy? I don't know. I always feel like there's some marketing strategy that you've got to...
Well, yeah, you do need a marketing strategy. I think, but also, I think the internet does support you putting things out in a few different ways. I think I think you've got a lot of... I think you could split it and have multiple... Because there's a lot of ideas in there, each of which is
quite deep.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't even know. You know, like you introduce yourself, like,
yeah.
Just trying to think of, because that's also sort of explaining why you're qualified to do it. But actually,
or I'm just trying to say what I can do as well. Like towards the end, I'm like, okay, look, I can make videos and shit and think about systems, but I still don't know anything. But did that not?
No. I was like,
I suppose the I Ching's advice that the truth is the path of least resistance.
I think when I say why not, it's like put it out there.
Yeah.
Like, what would you hold back, or what would you?
No, I don't know. It's like, is it? I guess I wonder if it's. I don't know. Does anyone care? Probably not.
Yeah, but how many people? I mean, realistically, how many people do you need to care? 3, 1 good idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't need to be 20,000.
I'm quite looking forward to using this, you know, the fact that I've been for the last 20 years working really hard on stuff to put it out artistically that certainly doesn't make any money or go anywhere most of the time, means that I'm kind of like pretty used to the idea of that to do that with a purpose beyond myself is a very small step and doesn't require any sort of like reconfiguring of anything. Like, it's interesting how it's not philanthropy, but activism. I wouldn't call what I'm doing activism, but it's interesting how that kind of isn't a big step from artist.
Yeah. Yeah.
And likewise, you've taken a step like the artist from activism into artist. A little bit.
Yeah.
Doing that. It's like they're strangely connected. But I've also been warned against making the art too activist-y. It's often the point at which I turn off. Is when someone writes a song about the political message, I'll start to be like, I've got my next idea, like once blank state fails. No, I had an idea for a YouTube channel where like we kind of tie back. Well, I was on the plane.
Right.
And I looked, you know, and it's just a random mix of people. And I looked to my left and someone was watching something I love. And I was like, yes, someone's watching that thing I love. And I looked to my right, just over a couple of seats, and I was like, the last thing she was watching I wasn't sure about, but I'm really glad she's watching this because it's great. And if there is a common ground to be found, it is film and TV series. And that's why YouTube, I think, is like the biggest channels are based on sort of film stuff, film criticism and stuff, or gaming, which is obviously another huge industry. I thought, well, what, I suppose another way into all this would be to somehow tie the latest Marvel blockbuster back into Brexit or something, right? Or into like tie that something back into universal basic income. And I've already had my first thoughts on. I noticed that Game of Thrones is quite a good allegory for Brexit and climate change.
Yes.
So King's Landing is like Brexit and political bullshit going on. Meanwhile, the Ice King is coming down from the north and winter is coming. And so this last series is all going to be, okay, well, I mean, it's nice that you were all mucking about on this Brexit stuff, but actually something real is happening.
Yeah.
So, the Starks, winter is coming. So they're the climate change warners. And then in King's Landing, there's all this the Trumps and the Theresa Mays fucking about, ignoring the fact that it's coming and occasionally getting interrupted with, oh, God, something's actually going on. So I thought Game of Thrones would be a good starting point for that. But I'll hold off until... But then also with that, you can then tie it into the releases of these things. So that was another idea I had. Might have a go at that.
So many ideas. I've barely got enough time to do Grand Podcast on top of life. So I had this idea for a YouTube channel called Mummy Mends.
Right.
Because I mend lots of things. And my daughter brings things. She gets, Mummy, I'm going to nursery. While I'm at nursery, can you please mend my buckle? Like some of the things she thinks that I'm going to be able to mend are quite remarkable. But then some of the things I can mend, I think, is quite cool. So that was one of my ideas for a YouTube channel. But I always think of it after I've just mended something. So it's like, it wouldn't be hard. And it has that nice Mummy Mends thing, which I think...
Yeah, it's good alliteration.
Yeah. So that would be cool.
This is why I did my little, okay, what if I didn't have to worry about a job, what would my schedule be? So you should think about that as well. Like, what's the schedule you want?
Well,
right?
when we find our billionaire who's going to drop all their not unpaid tax on us, so we can make things...
just get a Patreon going or whatever it is, a crowdfunding or a not like a social enterprise or something. I don't know, like some way of being able to work on the stuff we want to work on. And give it, so, because I sort of planned out, okay, I've got my monthly YouTube music video that I've got to do, so I'll put these times aside. Then we've got podcast stuff, a bit of time for a free swim, think about things on a Friday afternoon, and then maybe like a week's worth of days on the Blank State media production, and then maybe another few days a month on my sort of democracy platform, whatever that might be. Just kind of like visualizing the timetable. So to at least have something in mind. It's like the Blank State thing. It's like, let's see what we want it to be. And then if something comes up that seems to be towards that, then we'll spot it. But yours is going pretty well, right? If you assuming, we both enjoy a bit of paid work.
Yeah, we do. I do like my paid work. The thing that's suffering in my life at the moment is the time for self-care. Not doing enough Pilates and back stuff. But I'm sure the pendulum will swing back at some point.
Thanks for listening.
I was just going to say thank you for listening. I've forgotten what we do. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thank you. If you like the podcast, come to grandpodcast.com. If you want to help,
it would be wonderful if you wrote us a review. Subscribe, tell your friends, go and read things that we write. Generally, just, share it out. Write to us.
Yeah, write to us at hello@grandpodcast.com. That's the thing. Like I keep complaining about. So we don't get likes and little kind of real-time feedback like Facebook or Twitter in the same way. It being a podcast, there's a bit more separation. So that's, I've been saying, like, if you did want to send us an email, that would be good. But then that's a little bit stupid that I'm not reading the reviews, isn't it? Because some of those would probably be nice.
Yeah.
I might get a boost. Where can people find you, Ivanka?
People can find me at Ivanka on Twitter.
And yes, it's all kicking off over there.
It really is. Really, really is.
And you can find me at michaelforrestmusic.com. Also at Michael Forrest on Twitter, if you fancy Twitter. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much.
You know, keep the faith. Hope you enjoyed that. And if you've got any thoughts, just give us an email. Bye.
Bye.